How to overcome the objections now? Fact is that if your demonstration was very good, if your fact finding was very good, you won't have so many objections, and the only one you are going to have are just the customer which is trying to be sure that it doesn't make a mistake. So objections shouldn't be too much of a problem if you worked very well before, and should be just an advantage for you so that you can use it to close your sale. So the different steps now to overcome the objections. First, you have to listen. Don't cut your customer or your client when he speaks. Otherwise, he's going to get frustrated. And the reason you do it sometimes is because you are just afraid you don't have the answer. And then you think you have an answer. You want to cut the customer and to give him the answer right away. No, that's not a good way to do. So listen to your customer. Then you receive the objection with a sentence, something like, I understand. You are right. That depends when you can use it. You can use it sometimes, not always. But you can, most of the time is, I understand you. Then you give your answer, and then you check the satisfaction of the client. Fine? So listen, you receive the objection with a sentence, you give your answer, and you check his satisfaction. That are the different steps. Now, we are going to see that there are different kinds of objections, and that there are techniques to answer to these objections. But what you have to remember is that an objection is not always a bad sign. Very often, the customer wants to be sure that he doesn't make a mistake by buying something, because he's spending a lot of money for that, and he gives you objections just to make sure he doesn't make a mistake. And if you answer properly, that's going to help you more than anything else. So there are objections, but there are also claims, which is not exactly the same thing. But the way to proceed is pretty much the same. First, you listen, same way as for the objection. Then you receive the claim with emphatic sentence, I understand. That it may result of, I understand that it may be difficult for you, that whatever, you try to receive the claim. Then the difference with the objection is that you have to take note of the claim. Why? Because the objection you can answer right away. While for a claim, you have to take note of it. Generally, you have to transmit it to the right person. It could be your director or a specialist or whoever, if necessary. And then after, you come back later to check if he's satisfied with the answer he got from your company. Okay? So you listen, you receive the claim with an emphatic sentence, you take note of it, you transmit it, you wait that the action is taken, and then you check the satisfaction. Now, we have seen the difference between an objection and a claim. We are going to see that there are real and false objections. The problem of false objections is that if you want to answer to this objection, you may give the good answer, but for an objection that's not the right one, so it won't help. So you have to try to distinguish, to make the difference between a real and a false objections. Real objections are generally very specific, they are precise. The client gives you details, and it's a good news, because if you have a specific objection and you have the answer, after the answer, the client should be ready to buy. Okay? So again, they are precise, detailed, and it's a very good news if you have the answer. The problem is that very often the customer who doesn't want to buy won't give you the right objection. So he hides himself with another one, with a false one. And this false objection is general, it's not specific, it's fuzzy, and you feel that there is something wrong, It's too general. So the problem is that it hides a real one which is behind. So you will have to try to ask some questions so that you can find the right objection, so that you can answer to the right objections. But, the kind of false objections, I have to speak to my wife, I have to speak to my husband, I have to think about it, I have to check on the internet, what else? It's too expensive. You know that most of the time when the client says it's too expensive, it's not that it's too expensive. It's just that he's not ready to buy. There is another objection, or you have not been able to demonstrate your solution the way you should have done it. Money is most often a wrong excuse. You have to try to show that your solution is that, while the money is that. If we find that your solution is that and the money is that, that means that your demonstration wasn't good enough, or that the fact-finding wasn't good enough, or both. Now, the answering techniques. Basically, and this is key, this is not easy, but that you have to know. If you're a specialist, if you're a salesperson, if you're a rep, you have to know that perfectly well. Basically, you have three solutions when you have an objection. Either you know what to answer, you know the answer, or you don't know the answer, or you don't want to answer. Okay? And for each of these cases, there are two or three solutions that you can use. First case, you know the answer. You know what to answer. Then use it as a step to the closing. Okay? I don't know. For example, it's too expensive. But you have the answer. Let me show you how you are going to make and to gain money with that. Okay? But you have the answer. So basically, you use the objection as an advantage for you. Other person says, I don't think this car is very safe. Let me explain you all the safety devices of this car. And you are going to see that it's the safest car you can find on the market. So you use it as an advantage. But again, you have to know the answer. Another variation is you reformulate as a question. Is that important for you? And you get a yes. And while you do that, you think to the answer. And then you can come back with exactly the same explanation, but you made the objection even stronger to your own advantage. You really want a safe car? Is that really important for you? Is that what I understood? Yes, and while you formulate that, you think to your answer. Personally, I prefer the first one, to step directly on it. But it's really as you prefer. It's the same thing, but it takes a bit more time for the second one. Second possibility, you don't know the answer. That's a problem. And then the first possibility is to break it until you can answer. I'm going to try to find one. The client says, I don't want to work with your company because deliveries, we always have problems. And you can answer to that. So the only solution that you can have is too general. What kind of problems? Delivery problems. What kind of problem regarding delivery? You are always late. How many deliveries did you have this year? We had 20. Okay. How many were late? 4. How long did you have to wait for that? For one, it was 2 days. For the other one, 1 day. So if I understand well, you had 3 or 4 times where on the 20 where we were late and it was only 1 or 2 days. Then you can begin to answer. So you break the objections because it's too wide, it's too general, it's a false objection, and you want to break it to find exactly if the person is serious, and if yes, then you can begin to answer. And then you can go in your logbook to try to find out what happened these days. And if that's even true, and sometimes you're going to say, okay, finally, I see that on 20 deliveries in 1 year, there was really 1 time we're late of 2 days. And then you can begin to answer. Okay, so you break the objection with why. Now, if you know that you are wrong, you come back to the initial objective of the client. Why you work with us? Because you have the best product. So sometimes we may be late, but they only want to have the best product. So if you don't have any answer sometimes, and you know that he's right in his objections, it wouldn't work to try to break the objection because it's very right. You come back to the initial objective of the client. Now, sometimes as a rep, you don't want to answer. Why? Because some clients, they spend the time, they bring you they complain, they spend the time complaining, speaking, and you know that he likes to do that and it's not very important. So the best is to let the customer talk and to use the silence. And you let him go, and then you follow on in your sale. Because you know that this kind of customers or clients, they just want to complain. It's not important. So don't make it even more important by answering. Sometimes we prefer to use what we call the diversion. That means that you speak of another subject, a subject that is ideally emotional, exactly like you do at home when you have people coming at home in the evening and there is a subject like politics or something that you don't want to talk about. You just make a diversion and talk about something else. And you refuse even to talk about that. I know a friend, a rep too, and when the client tell him the price is too expensive, he doesn't talk. So it's a combination of silence and diversion. He just talks about something else, and at the end, as he's a very good rep, the customer buys and don't even come back to the initial objection. There is also the screen technique. That's my favorite, I have to say. Screen technique is to say, I understood very well what you said. But however, as a rep, you want to control, as a salesperson, you want to control your meeting. So you tell the customer, okay, no problem, we'll talk about it a bit later if you want. Most of the time, he will have forgot exactly, he will have forgot what the objection he had. So either you come back to the objection later, or you don't, if the customer forgot. So it's up to you. But I find out that the most professional one, from my point of view, is the screen technique. You acknowledge the objection, you say, we're going to talk about it a bit later in the sale or in the conversation, and you do or you don't later. So, you will always be in front of these three possibilities. You don't need to know and to use all the techniques, but you should have at least one for each case. And you should train on it. Obviously, the best solution is to have the answers. That's the first one. So you should make a list, that's what I do in companies, of the objections you have in the company and the best answer that you may have. And then you should know it perfectly well and the techniques for the case you wouldn't have the answer. Anyway, we stop here and we'll see the closing.